When I was much younger, a trend when I was in secondary school, a trend appeared among the boys in my class. They would inappropriately make contact with one another, and they did it to some younger boys too, playfully, like a joke, and the boys around them would laugh. Someone reported it to a teacher. I think it was the same incident. Someone reported it to a teacher, but the teacher just said something to placate the one who was wronged and suppress the entire situation, dismissing it as nothing serious. Maybe the teacher didn't see something wrong with it, and the boys around them didn't fully see it as a big deal either, because the ones doing it to them were boys like them, boys that played with them, that played football with them, that talked and joked around with them, and that have probably stood up for them on multiple occasions. So they assumed that it was just a joke, a strange joke, but a joke nonetheless. So they dismissed it and tried to move on with their lives. But that is exactly the same mistake that makes it so effective and enables it to continue for as long as it has. Because when a friend introduces you to adult behavior or adult materials, when you are that young, you do not see it as abuse, because the one doing it to you is someone you are very familiar with, someone you are very close to. And since there were no adults involved, since there was no adult involvement, you assume that you shouldn't make a big deal out of it. That is fine. Is this strange boy doing what is strange again? Or this strange girl doing her strange things again? But if you are honest with yourself, a lot of the problems and struggles you now have with intimacy, with boundaries, with indecent material, with indecent media, either started when a friend introduced them to you or introduced you to them, or that introduction escalated it. And that is a weapon, part of the coordinated assault on the family, and is so effective, so potent, because nobody addresses it and calls it for what it is. Because like I said, since there was no adult involvement, it's not seen as harm right in that moment. The one doing it to you is a friend, someone you are very close to. So your ability to tell them this is wrong and this should not happen again is almost completely disabled, completely silenced. And when you observe those around you treating it as normal, you feel like you shouldn't be the odd one out. You shouldn't make a big deal of something that everyone else is cool with, because you want to blend in with people, you want to blend in with your friends, you want to be accepted by them. So you keep quiet and help in normalizing the abnormal and deciding to forget about it, since it was a long time ago, if you have now become an adult. But doing so means you fail to trace the effect that had in your current life, your current adult life, how it affected you, how it influenced you, and that you will fail to prevent that from happening in the lives of your children and in the lives of those around you if you are placing authority over children. And here's the thing, no one is born doing this. A friend who introduces inappropriate materials to their friend, either as a prank, as a joke, or to make them a partner in that harmful, destructive activity, has been exposed to that themselves, has been a victim of that themselves, either physically or through the media. Because a young person does not invent inappropriate behavior from nothing. They learn it, they are taught from what was shown to them, what was done to them, what they watched, or from dark entities, demonic entities. Yes, demonic entities can transmit ideas into the minds of young people. And if they haven't been taught by their parents how to discern between thoughts, how to know which ones are theirs and which ones are not, they just assume that all those thoughts are theirs and they just go with it with no defense, no resistance, and no filter. Anyone doing that, showing inappropriate materials to their friends and their peers, has been a victim of that themselves. Something or someone broke them, and dark entities gained access into their soul and into their life. And now those dark entities are looking for expression and multiplication through them to other people, using that young person who most times is ignorantly partnering with those dark entities, with those demonic forces. And this isn't just about what happens to a single person. It's about access, it's about leverage, access to the person, access to the family, coming from that person to the generations that person will birth and that person will train. If the enemy cannot force harmful media on a person at home, they will use their friends, their peers, to introduce to them games, language, media, to bring them onto that same path as quickly as possible. The goal of the enemy is to bring that person into bondage as early and as quickly as they can, because God designed the family so that godly values, identity, a correct biblical model of society and reality, and generational blessings can be transferred from one generation to the next, so that by being born into a family, you automatically inherit a lot of advantages, that is massive leverage, and that is a self-perpetuating system, which is a great threat to the enemy. So the enemy invented the broken family system to try and combat that leverage, to try and combat that system that God instituted, and if possible to control it. And what peers do to one another at an early age, just one of the weapons he uses to achieve that breaking and that control. When peers and friends introduce inappropriate materials to their friends, it normalizes the abnormal and sets the stage for further escalation down the road, and opens doors to demonic entities, to dark entities, to gain access into the person's life, and like I said, to the generations coming out of the person that the person will train. And those dark entities work hard to ensure repetition in the children that person will have, making sure the cycle continues. So the person is targeted for generational return on investment, if you will put it that way. Seeds of destruction of unhealthy habits and unhealthy attachments and unhealthy addiction are planted in them in their early years that will yield returns in their teenage and adult years and in their families, creating a broken family system that provides no protection to the children that will be born in it against such thing happening to them. So what's the remedy for this? What's the antidote? That exposure to unhealthy and inappropriate materials that peers do, that friends do to their friends, brings corruption and normalization of the abnormal. And the antidote to that, the correction for that, is sanctification, which only Holy Spirit can do. There is a massive difference between trying to do good and trying to be good and trying to forget what happened to you, and actually having it wiped out of your soul, uprooted out of your soul, and having your soul transformed to have a different nature, to be incompatible with such inappropriate materials completely, such that you see it as unnecessary and uninteresting, and genuinely pity those who engage in it, not acting, but because it comes from deep down in your soul. And how you become this way is by asking Holy Spirit to sanctify your soul, where he makes you holy, he makes you pure, sanctifies your entire being, as opposed to you having to manage triggers in your soul while wading your way through temptations that you still notice and you are still prone to. And he does this by giving you instructions. But before he gives you instructions, you have to ask him for help. You have to come into agreement with him that you need his help and you want him to help you. And after you ask him for help, he will give you instructions for you to keep. And those instructions will be your consecration. There are general instructions and there are specific instructions specific to you. General instructions like don't lie, don't cheat, don't envy, and don't be involved in sexual perversions. And specific instructions like don't watch TV or don't watch movies or cut off connections to that person or pray at this specific time and fast this way. Specific instructions like that. And the more you obey his instructions, the more he sanctifies you, until you get to the point where you realize that you've changed so much and you never want to go back to the way you were. You notice your habits changing, your desires changing, your way of thinking changes, and where you were becomes so inhospitable to you that you never want to go back there. And all this begins by asking Holy Spirit for help, because only he can do this for you. So that's it for this video. I hope it helped you in a tremendous way. Next video we'll talk about verbal abuse. What happens when you grow up constantly hearing words that are meant to tear down your identity and any confidence that you might have in yourself, and what that does to you as an adult and does to the family that you will have. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments, and I'll see you next time.